What is going on, everybody? It is Cuda here, or Kian, and welcome back to the channel. So in today's story time, I have a very, very insane one for you guys. I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. It's about the time that my teacher was caught doing shrooms at school. He was tripping, and yeah, it didn't end very well for him, so I'm going to tell you about it. And now to give this story all context, I have a little side story to start off the video for you guys. So I remember one time that me and a couple of friends were in this teacher's class. Let's just refer to him as Mr. Jones. And now there's two little shop areas. There's like the welding and then there's the woodworking shops. And they kind of sandwich the classroom, and then his office is in the classroom. And so Mr. Jones I think he was in the woodworking shop working on some project. And me and a couple of friends went into his office to get some wood glue, to get some, materials for our endeavors. And you want to guess what we saw that was on his desk? There was just a bag of white powder, and you could say that it's baby powder, or maybe he's baking with flour, but I think we all knew what it was because we knew Mr. Jones and we knew that he liked to, get down and have fun. So, yeah, it didn't really surprise us that he had that on his desk. And so there's windows on the woodworking shop, and he looks and sees us in the office, obviously, looking at this substance. And he comes rushing in, and he's like, "Hey, you guys aren't supposed to be in here." And we just kind of looked at him like, "Oh, okay." And we walked out and never said anything to anybody. So yeah, with all things considered, we probably should have seen this coming, but nobody did. Nobody said anything. And yeah, we just kind of proceeded with our lives. So yeah, anyway, now on to the actual story time that I have for you guys today. It all started off as a normal day. It was my senior year. And my senior year was really boring for me because I had already taken all the hard classes that I needed to. So I was just kind of fucking around every day that I went to school. And mind you, for the first half of the school year, we were online half the time, so we really didn't have much in-class exposure, and all of our work was pretty much online. And so you can imagine how that would be for a tech teacher. I mean, he'd just log into Zoom every day and give you nothing to do because you can't obviously work on something when you're not in the classroom or in the workshop. And so when we went back to school full-time, we actually had projects that we were working on in tech, but we really didn't have any progress on them because we had been home the whole time. And so anyways, I had Mr. Jones at one of my last periods of the day, so it was right at the end of the day. I was ready to go home. I wasn't trying to work on anything or hammer nails into anything because that just took too much effort at the end of the day, and I was already tired. So me and a couple of friends that were working on the same project just kind of sat in the classroom, not really doing anything, and we saw Mr. Jones go into his office for something. We really didn't know what he was doing, but I mean, it doesn't really matter because we found out. And all throughout the class, he was acting very strange. He was kind of looking off into the distance and not really explaining things very well, and he just kind of seemed out of it a little bit. So we were in the classroom, and the office had two doors, one on each side. It was basically a big long hallway, and there was two offices in there for the two tech teachers that shared the classroom. And basically Mr. Jones went into his office, and he didn't come out for like 15 minutes, and that was kind of unusual for him because he would always be walking around and kind of seeing how the projects are going, helping anyone if they need anything, that sort of thing. So it was kind of weird for him to just kind of like stay hunkered down in his office. So we go in there and we check on him. And when we went in there, it was a very strange sight, but we didn't really think anything of it. He was eating a sandwich, and on the sandwich were some mushrooms, and we really didn't think anything of it because he was just eating a sandwich. Maybe he was having a late lunch. And so we start talking to him, and we're like, "Mr. Jones, we're kind of stuck on our project. We need your help." And we just kind of got into a conversation with him, and we could tell that he was definitely not in peak performance shape. And so one of my friends looks at him and asks, "Mr. Jones, is everything all right? You look a little bit under the weather there." And he just looks at my friend and he's like, "Yeah, I'm okay. Why do you ask?" And my friend was just like, "Oh, no reason, Mr. Jones. You just look a little bit out of it today. Maybe you had a long night last night. Sorry about that." Mr. Jones was like, "Oh, no worries." And he just kind of looks at my friend with this like dazed look almost. And when he looked at my friend knew exactly what he was eating, and he knew exactly what he was doing. So not only was he on mushrooms, but he was eating more. So this man spent the better half of the day tripping on mushrooms, and now he was eating more to trip when he was going home to his kids and his wife. You just see where this story is going. This truly was a recipe for disaster for Mr. Jones. And so my friend just straight up asks him, he's like, "Mr. Jones, are you tripping right now? Are those mushrooms on your sandwich?" And Mr. Jones was all like, No, these are just mushrooms from the store, man. I don't know what you're talking about. And we just knew. We just knew right then and there from his reaction. We were like, yep, well, he's tripping. And so we walk out of the office and we sit back down at our desks, laughing our asses off that our teacher, Mr. Jones, is tripping on mushrooms while he's eating more. And here's where things take a turn for the worse for Mr. Jones. So we're sitting there, and about 5 minutes after we get out of his office, 2 police officers from our school walk in, and they're like, hey, have you seen Mr. Jones? And I was like, yeah, he's in his office. Why? And they proceed to tell me that a freshman came to the office that morning and said that Mr. Jones was staring at her and making her very uncomfortable, and they wanted to talk to him about it. And at that point, I knew Mr. Jones was fucked because, yes, he was on shrooms, and he probably was staring at this girl, and he probably was making her very uncomfortable. And for someone who doesn't understand that he's on shrooms, they probably wouldn't understand why he's staring, and he didn't mean anything by it. But yeah, I could see how that would make someone uncomfortable. And it makes perfect sense that she went to the office about it. You know, what else would you do? So they find Mr. Jones in his office, and they find him eating his mushroom sandwich. Probably didn't think anything of it, just like us. But they walk in there, and we hear him talking. It's in the office. It's on the other side of the wall, so we can't really understand what they're saying. But it's something along the lines of, you know, like, what did she say? Did you talk to her? Something like that, you know? And at one point, I heard Mr. Jones say at the top of his lungs, I don't even know who the fuck this girl is. And me and all my friends just kind of looked at each other like, oh, shit, this is really going down. Like, Mr. Jones is getting into some shit with the police officers. So yeah, long story short, they had a very long conversation with Mr. Jones, and by the time they were done, we were out of his classroom, so we don't know how it ended. Well, we do know how it ended, actually, and I'm going to tell you right now. So the next day rolls around, and we get to Mr. Jones's class, and go figure, we have a substitute teacher. And so we asked the substitute teacher what happened to Mr. Jones, and she said that he was facing jail time for sexual harassment, and that he was no longer with the school district because they follow a zero-tolerance policy as far as substances are concerned. And yeah, let's just say he knocked that one out of the park. And oddly enough, I just heard a few weeks ago that he actually is still working at my former high school, and he got his job back. So that's cool because I liked Mr. Jones, and he wasn't really a bad guy. He just got wrapped up in the wrong stuff, and he let it affect his work life a little bit. And then, you know, he got misunderstood, and I could totally see how that would happen with the girl. Totally not blaming her or anything. More power to her. But anyway, Mr. Jones totally would never have done anything. He is a nice guy, and he totally didn't mean anything by it. But, you know, drugs happen, and shit goes down. So, yeah. So anyways, moral of the story is don't do shrooms and go to school, especially if you're a teacher. That probably won't pan out well for you. There's a time and place for tripping, and I'm afraid that school is not one of them. Especially considering the fact that Mr. Jones was getting paid to teach us tech, not entertain us with his drug problem. So anyways, guys, that's going to be the story time for today. I hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, hit that like button. And if you want to see more from me, hit that subscribe button. But anyways, guys, it's been Cuda, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.